There comes a point in every human life when the noise quiets, when the laughter feels hollow, when the achievements stop thrilling. For some, it happens early. For others, much later. But for him, it came suddenly, like a wave crashing against a sandcastle he didn't realize he was building. This is the story of how one man's existential crisis became the doorway to his spiritual awakening. He had everything society told him he should want. A stable job, a decent apartment, a circle of friends who laughed at his jokes. He posted pictures of sunsets, got likes, ate avocado toast, and smiled at brunch. From the outside, he was fine, that word we use so often to mask the erosion happening within. But late at night, when the world fell asleep and silence crept in like smoke under the door, he felt it. A gnawing emptiness. A question echoing in the chambers of his mind. What is the point of all this? He tried to ignore it at first. More distractions. More scrolling. More late nights out. But the question only grew louder. He started feeling detached. The things he once enjoyed became bland. Conversations felt scripted. Even the mirror offered no comfort. He began wondering if he was playing a role in someone else's play, reading lines he never auditioned for. It wasn't depression, exactly. It wasn't sadness or anger. It was a deep, aching confusion. Who am I really? What am I doing here? One night, he sat alone in his apartment, staring at the ceiling fan spinning overhead. He whispered a question, not to anyone in particular, but to the vastness of existence itself. If this is all there is, what's the point of living? It wasn't a suicidal thought. It was an honest, desperate cry from the soul. And sometimes, that's all the universe needs. Because that night, something shifted. Not dramatically. No flashing lights. No mystical voice. But a quiet pull, an invitation from within. A nudge to explore the question instead of resisting it. And that was the beginning. In the weeks that followed, he began doing something he'd never really done before. He listened. Not to podcasts. Not to TED Talks. But to the space between his thoughts. He sat in silence, awkward, raw silence. At first, his mind rebelled. It screamed, flailed, made grocery lists, replayed arguments from 3 years ago. But slowly, it softened. He began meditating. Not because it was trendy, but because he was desperate to meet himself. He read books, not self-help, but texts on presence, on being, on consciousness. Eckhart Tolle, Ram Dass, the Bhagavad Gita, Rumi. It was as if each page held a mirror, and in those reflections, he saw glimpses of a truth buried deep under layers of identity. He realized something earth-shattering. He was not his thoughts. He was not his job. He was not even his name. He was awareness itself. The witness. The presence behind the mask. This wasn't a belief. It wasn't a theory. It was a felt experience, subtle, quiet, undeniable. One morning, after a particularly still meditation, he stepped outside. The world hadn't changed. But he had. The trees looked alive. The wind carried a song. Even the faces of strangers shimmered with a strange sacredness. He felt connected to everything. The existential dread hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. It was no longer a threat. It was a compass. A sacred question pointing him inward, not outward. He stopped needing answers, because he had found something more valuable. Presence. Awareness. Peace. He understood now that spiritual awakening isn't about escaping the world. It's about seeing the world as it is, without filters, without labels, without fear. He started living slower, eating slower, breathing deeper, listening more, reacting less. And perhaps most importantly, he started trusting life. Spiritual awakening didn't mean he stopped paying bills or having hard days. It didn't make him perfect, enlightened, or immune to the human condition. But it changed his relationship with it all. He stopped trying to control everything. Stopped arguing with what is. He began to feel gratitude for the very pain that once haunted him. Because without that existential crisis, he would have never stopped long enough to remember who he truly was. The crisis wasn't a breakdown, it was a breakthrough. And from that dark night of the soul, a new dawn emerged. Not the old sun rising, but him. Reborn in awareness. So if you, too, find yourself staring at the ceiling fan at 2 a.m., wondering what the point of it all is, take heart. The darkness is not your enemy. It's a door. And if you dare to walk through it, not with fear, but with curiosity, you may just find the peace you've been chasing was always within you. Maybe your existential crisis is not the end. Maybe, just maybe, it's your invitation to wake up. Spiritual awakening doesn't come in thunder or lightning. It comes in stillness, in surrender, in the sacred pause between breath and thought. And often, it begins with the most painful question. Who am I, really? But keep going. Keep listening. Because on the other side of that question is a truth so quiet, so beautiful, it doesn't need to be spoken. It only needs to be remembered.